It's been a long challenge. Chair's over there drying up. Ideally, I'd be rocking back in it right now, giving you a yarn about that thing. But the way it's working out, challenge is due tomorrow night at 12 o'clock midnight. I've just put a coat of finish on. It's together. I need another day of editing this video. So let's get to the build. 5 years ago, wooden thumb wasn't a thing. I was building things, but not under a name or anything cool like that. I didn't have any form of social media. I didn't even have a Facebook account at that point. I had every little gremlin running around depending on me, and I had 2 kidneys. 5 years ago, my main projects were chopping boards and gift boxes. I did a few coffee tables and bedside tables. They were fun builds. I wasn't handcuffed by challenger dates and everything like that, but it is what it is. But now the whole social media thing makes us want to move through at a quick pace and finish jobs here and there and get stuff done for the content, you know? The algorithm, I hate algorithm. With this one, I tried to slow it down a bit and take my time building it. End of the day, a deadline's a deadline. Thanks, Phil. Using this jig meant I could repeat the bend 4 times and just repeat, which saves a lot of time, except for the 3 days it takes for completing one of the curves. But you've seen that in another build I did last year. Once all 36 strips were cut, it was time to start steaming, and I went back to my trusty steam box. It's so simple. Form ply, steamer from Bunnings, and you got yourself a steam box. I follow the same process for every bend. I steam it for a few hours, then I clamp it up, let it dry to its new form, and this part's actually the hardest part because it doesn't have its new form yet. Once that's dry, then I add the glue, and that glue up is a lot easier because the bends have already got their shape, so it pretty much just goes back together the exact same way. And as always, I'm using that poly glue because it froths up and foams up. Love it. It can be a bit of a headache to get rid of and clean up afterwards, but when we're bending and talking about moisture, I reckon the poly glue is the way to go. And it gives you some pretty satisfying moments when you're peeling the glue off like that, because it is such a plastic, I guess. It just comes right off the melamine. Oh, it's so satisfying. Overall, the whole bending process for these 4 curves took me about 2 and a bit weeks, but it was very rinse and repeat. Use the exact same clamps, same process every time. And I needed a morning coffee. I'm not just completely winging it like I usually do. I did some sort of researching into what makes a rocking chair and more specifically the rockers. That was part of the process I haven't got into yet. I had to cut out a jig for the rocker, but I tried to do it in a way where I could use it again for something else that wasn't just a rocking chair. Who knows? Stay tuned. Believe it or not, the bending was the easiest part of this project. It was a straightforward thing that I could do, and I've done it before. Joining all these bits together was the real test for me. A rocking chair is a piece of furniture that you don't get a lot of room for error in, and you can't really test much. The only time I can test is when it's actually a little bit too late. Once all the joinery is cut and all the pieces are together, I can't really go back and redo bits after that. Over the last 5 years, I have been doing a lot more machine woodworking, but I did try dabbling in a lot of hand-cut joinery. You'd see it in some of the boxes that I've done, and even my other stool that I bent last year. Big shout out goes out to Phil from Gradually Wizardly for running this challenge and giving us all something to work towards for the end of the year. I quite like participating in these challenges. Each time I keep saying, oh no, I'll give one a rest, but then I hear a theme and everyone gets so passionate and involved, and I just get a bit of FOMO about it. And I've got to throw my hat into the ring. I went back to some of that lappy goodness for those joints to get these pieces together. Some bridle joints as well when I joined the rockers to the rest of the leg frame. My plan of having no real plan was to get one done right and then pretty much just copy it onto the next one. Trace it into the exact same spots, cut the same joineries, and hopefully it all just went together well. This working rod template that I did on the CNC was pretty much the only thing I had to go off for seeing if the design was right. I had nothing else to go off. This was actually a pretty smooth glue up. The joints went together where they were supposed to go. I just had to clamp everything tight and give the right amount of pressure. I did get a bit of creative with the clamping there, but after a few attempts and a few dry runs, the wet run went well. Wet run went well. With everything looking a bit square and boxy, my idea was to have this big round over on all the edges so that it looked like it was dowel bending around all these curves. Don't know if I got that look, but I got pretty close. Time's running out, so I just need to crack out the domino and glue these cross rails in. I used 4, 2 down the rockers, 2 where the seat supports would be, and then I had a backrest as well that joined it together. The way the seat was going to work, I wanted this little curve on the back so that it didn't just look like a chopping board glued in the middle of a frame of wood that was bent, which is pretty much what this chair is, but it helps when you take both sides off the double-sided tape. Also, be safe with the router. You don't know when it's going to just take a big chunk out of your piece. You'll realize that some parts just seem to appear because, like I said, time was running out. So I've just cut pieces and they've appeared. So here's a backrest for you. Like I said, parts just appear. The seat base had a subtle little curve on the back, which was the same curve that matched the backrest. This glue up was the hardest and most stressful glue up I've ever done. If you follow along on my Instagram, you would have seen it was a nightmare. Parts went together when there was no glue, but for some reason, as soon as you add glue, they like to slip and slide all over the place and just not go together. Not gonna lie, the stress levels were through the roof at this point. Was not in a happy place right now, but lucky I had a second set of hands to join me, so it would just stop falling apart and I could get some clamps on this thing finally. One thing with those big clamps, watch out for those sharp ends. Now, I actually taped up every single joint with some clear packing tape to avoid the glue squeeze out and hopefully cut down my sanding time. but it just meant I had to spend extra time removing all that tape, and I still had to do quite a bit of sanding with a Dremel and a random orbital with a soft foam pad that adjusted to the contours of all the curves. I've whacked on a coat of Osmo Poly X and just quickly buffed it in so I could get this project done and dusted and ready to upload for the challenge. The last thing Phil said this challenge had to be was it had to be a gift for someone. And I've got someone special in mind that I don't want to ruin the surprise for. So you'll see a bit later who's going to get this sweet rocking chair. Thanks for the challenge, Phil. Until next time, see you later.